Good afternoon. Welcome to the Catholic Foundation's Charitable Giving Lesson Learned. We're very glad to have you all here with us today. My name is Nancy Kogan. I'm the president of the Catholic Foundation of Florida. I've been here for 15 years. I was just asked that, and I'm just so excited to see all the growth and all the people who contributed to the mission of the foundation. We're delighted to share this philanthropic content with you. In addition to the knowledge that you're going to gain from our expert, Christy Eckoff, our giving friends, we invite you to learn more about the Catholic Foundation and how, for over 31 years, we're helping Catholics and others make a lasting difference in our community. With your partnership, we can ensure that the Catholic community and its ministry have the financial resources to serve current and future generations. And speaking of partnerships, we'd like to do a special thank you to the Georgia United Credit Union. I always want to make sure I say it right, and the CAN for their sponsorship. And they have in their credit union, they have a special focus on serving Catholics in the community, in addition to the broader community. So, and they will go speak to your Catholic entities if you would like to learn more about all the services that they provide, and they'll speak to your employees. So if you would like to do more with that, you would want to talk to them. And then I also want to thank the Quest Catholic Radio, and Kathy McCormick is here representing them. They're our media sponsor for our work, and they're working very hard to grow the Catholic radio in our archdiocese. They have the English speaking programs, and they're currently fundraising for starting a Spanish speaking one. So if you want to support them and learn more about them, you can go online or you can reach out to them too. So we're very grateful. So now I would like to invite Monsignor Peter Rao, pastor of St. Peter Chanel, to start us off in prayer. We know it's a little backwards praying after eating, but we know the Lord is okay with that. So we appreciate that.
Well, as I always say, for all that is within us and in front of us. Thanks to God. God is so good and generous to us, and especially to this diocese. And so it's wonderful that we gathered together today and to look at all the opportunities. And so we gather in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. And good and gracious God, we ask your blessing upon our gathering today. We ask your Spirit to come upon us now. Open our hearts to all the many ways in which we can share your life and your love with others, especially through the support of our mission and our work. We make our prayer all in the name of the one who called each one of us by name, Christ our Lord, who is Lord forever and ever. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Nancy.
And now I would like to invite the vice chair of our board and chair of the development committee, Brent Heron, who is a partner at Small Heron Law Firm, and he's going to come and say a few words and introduce you to you.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great to have everyone here today. See, we're in school with as many people as we have. I thank you all here to thank you for all being here today. I just want to speak for just a couple minutes about the Professional Advisors Network. This is something that we started pre-COVID. I think we had a few meetings pre-COVID, and then kind of the pandemic, we kind of slowed down. And so now we're trying to ramp back up. But the Professional Advisors Network is an opportunity for those of us that are professional advisors in the community, whether you are a lawyer, an accountant, in the insurance trade, no matter what your profession is, an opportunity to get together to network, to have opportunities for things like we're having here today, in which we are given content that we can take back and use to help our clients. So if you are not a part of the network, I invite you to sign up for the network. There's a number of resources that are on the Catholic Foundation website. So if you just go to the website, which is cfnga.org, and there is a drop down for the Professional Advisors Network where you can sign up and be a part of it. So I would invite you all to do that. It is my pleasure today to introduce my friend, Christy Eckoff. Christy is the Senior Vice President and Senior Trust Advisor at Wells Fargo Private Bank here in Atlanta. Christy worked with clients to integrate fiduciary, trust, philanthropic, business transition, and investment knowledge into each client's custom wealth plan to help grow and preserve assets while working toward the client's overall wealth management goals. Christy is an expert on trust and estate law, tax and gift planning, asset-based giving, impact investing, philanthropic vehicles, legislative changes, and laws surrounding private foundations, supporting organizations, donor-advised funds, and nonprofit taxation. She was the founder of Significant Ventures LLC, a full-service philanthropic, nonprofit endowment and investment and gift planning consulting firm. Previously, Christy served as Chief Foundation Officer of the Atlanta Jewish Foundation, Managing Director, Philanthropic Council and the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, and served as Senior Director of Gift Planning at Georgia State University. She has over 15 years experience as a tax attorney dealing with complex trusts, estates, and income tax planning. Christy is currently the co-chair of the National Standards for Gift Planning Task Force of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planning. He is past president of the Georgia Plan Giving Council and past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals Greater Atlanta Chapter. She is currently a member of the Atlanta Estate Planning Council, a board member of the Georgia Plan Giving Council, the North Carolina Bar, and a trustee of the Endowment of the Junior League of Atlanta. Christy was a board member of ADNET, which is the Advancement Network for Community Foundations. Okay. I'm just giving the text. Welcome, my friend.
My parents actually live here in the area, and they do go to a Catholic church, and I can't remember the name of it, but they volunteer attendance at the hall every Wednesday afternoon in Marietta, so while the Marbles out there, you know, then tell them their daughter is something. They have no idea what I do. So today we're gonna talk, I've got a whole list of things to talk about, but, none of this is the opinion of Wells Fargo Private Bank. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Next no slides. I'll be better. So as we're going, if you have questions, feel free to kind of raise your hand. If I don't talk about all these things, it's fine. Yeah, eventually talk about these things sometime. So I want to start with the end of the year. We're like, what? 5, 6, 7 weeks until then. Wow. So December 31st this year is on a Sunday. That's going to create some problems. So let's just kind of review a little bit about when a charitable gift is actually completed due to different assets. So cash, obviously, when you have it in hand as a charitable organization, physically, a check, a physical check in hand, unless it's sent by FedEx or UPS overnight, not USPS, for whatever reason. So if it's sent FedEx or UPS overnight, then it counts whenever the donor put the check in the mail and UPS has custody of it. If they mail it, it's when you receive it. So weird. So be sure you're, saying those different types of things to people. Stock.
Won't that change? That's always been that way. You've been doing it wrong.
That means I know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
About the stamp on that.
Because ultimate liability for data gift is not necessarily on the charity, it's on the donor. So the donor can do whatever they want. Basically. Stock, when it hits your charity's brokerage account. It's not when it's sent by the donor and they put in their order and the order is placed. And it can take sometimes 3 to 5 days for that to happen. So just be sure people are aware what a lot of charities do and say, hey, if you're gonna send stock, do it by December 22nd. Or do it by whenever, because banks are closed that Monday. 25th. And probably everybody's taking off the 26th as well. So it's probably gonna be Wednesday before anybody even gets to it. And they've only got until Friday to execute and get it to your DTC account. So be aware of that. Any other type of asset, so if somebody's giving you real estate, art, whatever it is, when you have the deed in hand or physical stock certificates or anything like that, that you actually have possession of it. So any questions on that?
Does there need to be any evidence of recording of the deed?
So it has to be recorded.
Gifting real
So it
property.
doesn't have to be recorded, it just has to be the deed. Done in your hand and then. So your responsibility as a charity is to give them what is called a contemporaneous receipt. So that receipt has to be done within 30 days of receiving the gift in order for the IRS to acknowledge it. I'm going to talk about some court cases that have arisen where deductions were denied because of non-contemporaneous receipts or receipts going bad. You have to actually say, thank you for your gift of 25 shares of Apple stock that we received on X date. You're not responsible for putting a value. That's the donor's responsibility for the value. But a lot of organizations, and the value of stock that's given is the day that you get it into your account, the average of the high and low on that date. That's what the value is. So if you want to be nice, you can say, hey, the low that day was X, the high that day was X, but do not put a dollar value. Never put a dollar value on that. If you're receiving assets, name the asset, never put a value on the receipt. Pretty easy with cash or checks. Thanks for your gift of the check of X. And then it's fine. And anything else, do never put a dollar value on the receipt. So again, it's that donor's obligation to get that value. And there's certain IRS forms that they have to fill out in order to get appraisals to do that.
Is it okay to say if we were to have purchased this ourselves, it might have cost us?
Yeah.
Stay away from that. Okay. Okay.
And can I ask, what is the current feeling on if someone, if you know, all these offers to pay for the fees? I always include the value of the fee because that's also what they paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
They paid it, you'll move you paying it again.
Okay.
I've lost it. And a lot of advisors and institutions will waive fees if they're going to a charitable institution.
I'm just thinking of
Yeah,
like
exactly.
online.
Yeah, exactly, the online gift, you add like 3% or whatever it is, that is a gift.
Yeah.
So that is part of it. Again, in the receipt, it has to state that no goods or services were received. If anything is missing, it has to be, you have to have the name of the organization on the receipt as well. If any of that is missing, then the donor can't take the deduction. And they're not gonna be happy. And again, there's been some court cases that have really come up around this issue. With that. So, again, make sure that your donors are aware of some potential issues that may arise if they try to do stock gifts. Mutual funds. If they want to give you a mutual fund, good luck, you probably don't have time. Mutual funds take at least 4 weeks to transfer over. And the gift is effective for mutual funds when it hits your account. A lot of times the organization has to actually set up an account at the mutual fund in order to accept it. And that takes time. Because good luck prying the driver's license number and social security number of your board chair out to try to set up an account. At some random mutual fund provider. We get that. So be aware of that as well. Again, talk about appreciated stock as a gift. I think either NASDAQ or the stock market is on like a 10-day run of gains. You know, there's still a lot of great appreciated assets out there. The appreciated stock. Again, it's beneficial to your donor to gift appreciated stock because what happens is they get to take a deduction for the fair market value of the stock on the date it hits your account. They pay no capital gains on any gain. So if somebody's got $10 basis, which is what they paid for it, Apple stock, and Apple stock is now worth $1,000. They can sell that Apple stock, pay capital gains on $900 and give you the whatever result is the resulting of that, probably about $750. Or they can give you the stock, you take the deduction of $1,000 and you get $1,000. So again, if you Google charitable contribution of appreciated stock, you'll find a nice little chart that kind of says and explains that in numbers. If you're a visual person. So,
For checks and cash is the date that we get it in hand. So if we get it on a Saturday, and say we get it on Saturday, the 30th, then that still counts as year end, even though we haven't deposited it.
yes. Yeah, we call it the mailbox rule.
Okay.
It's your mailbox.
Do you have something in writing that's not part of Wells Fargo that that sort of sets out what needs to be on the receipt when you receive the gift, or a source where I can go and look?
Google it.
Oh,
Honestly,
okay.
it's there. You'll see examples of this, do contemporaneous charitable gift receipt.
Okay.
And you'll see it like that too.
With exchange traded fund shares, it trades like a stock, but they're not. You take the average net asset value or.
Yeah, it's usually whatever it traded for on that day. Same thing with mutual fund. The data hits the account. So again, kind of be careful of that. Those little quirks that we've got, especially with the 31st being on a Sunday. I've spent 10 p.m. on the 31st, waiting for somebody to drive by on their way to a New Year's Eve party with a $2 million check. So people wait to the last minute. It happens.
They call me, I'll be there.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm not doing anything. It's just me and the dog. Whatever.
But does it have to be at the office? Can they just?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the office. You physically have it in your hand, wherever you are. That's the nice thing about being on the private bank side now. I don't have to like wait up until 11:30 midnight on the 31st. Hey, I forgot to do this. Help me. With that. So let's talk about donor advised funds. We always talk about donor advised funds, but we do it because they're huge and getting huger, and they are the preferred way for most people who have assets to give, not just cash and income, to do their giving. It's easy, you know, especially if they're dealing with stock. They just take the stock, put it in their donor advised fund. Call Juliet, tell her it's coming. It goes into their donor advised fund, and then they can make grants out of that donor advised fund to as many nonprofits as they want. They take the deduction when it comes to, you know, the Catholic Foundation. That's fun. So, you know, they can do it any time of year. Doesn't make a difference. And then they can give out any time of year. The money's invested while it's in there. So it's a huge benefit to a lot of people. And what we're finding now is that probably 25 to 30% of a donor advised fund is given out every year. You think about a private foundation, which is another kind of mechanism for really rich people to do, they're only mandated to give out 5%. So there's a lot more money coming into the nonprofit sector from donor advised funds than from private foundations. There's been some legislative brouhaha around donor advised funds for a while now. It comes up every year. They're not legally mandated to give out money every year. Although every sponsoring organization of donor advised funds has a policy that money has to go out in a certain time period or on a certain time period schedule. That legislation's not going anywhere right now unless it gets stuck into one of these bills that keeps coming up. The House. You don't really see a lot of interest in it, a lot of movement in it. There's not much interest right now in the universal charitable deduction either. Which is basically take your charitable deduction before you take any other deductions against income. And then you kind of take your standard deductions or your other itemized deductions. There's not a lot of behind that right now. It's pretty big. We all got thrown a bone in the charitable sector with the Secure Act 2.0. We're talking a little bit about that as well. So they're kind of like, yeah, you're good. We'll take your meeting, we'll take your free lunch, but we're really not going to push for anything. Right now, you know, they can barely keep the government open. Let alone try to do some kind of sophisticated charitable that nobody understands. So any questions about donor advised funds? You all provide them $5,000 minimum. The thing I love about you all having the ability to work with the Catholic Foundation, say a donor comes to you and they have some weird asset and you're going, how do I present this to my finance committee? My CFO or treasurer is going to be like, yeah, no, we're not even going to touch it. Piece of real estate, you know, whatever it is. RV. Yeah, well, cars or RVs or timeshares, just say no. And send them on their way. You don't want any part of that. You don't want the unperked land in the mountains of North Georgia that's been on the market for 10 years either. The whole goal of accepting an asset is to sell it so that you actually have funds to use. Unless you're gonna put something on a piece of property, whatever it is, unless you're actually gonna use it for the related use of your organization. You're just there to get it, sell it, use the proceeds. That's all you wanna do.
Do you have any suggestions of what to do then with a piece of property that we can't seem to find anybody to buy?
What's on it?
Like a swamp?
Give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, I've even tried that.
Don't give it to that. Give it as a bonus to one of your employees. You know, when I was at Georgia State, we had all these cemetery plots that nobody like had been there for like 50 years and nobody really knew what to do with. And it was like, let's just give us bonuses to employees. That's you, great. Do really well and I'll give you that plot.
I would like to say that if the donor is alive and they're trying to give you something and you're a Catholic entity in the archdiocese, we will help with you can be oh, this is so generous of you, thank you so much. And then we can be the ones that do the due diligence to see whether or not it gets accepted. One example of that was somebody who was trying to give his church a piece of property that he had bought sight unseen at an auction at the courthouse steps, and it was not buildable. And so the pastor was able to say, oh, you're so generous, thank you. And then we're able to say, no, you can't, we can't do it. Now, in Jen's case, this was in a bequest. And so they got stuck with it without being able to say no.
You can always disclaim a bequest.
Okay.
You don't have to take it.
Okay. Okay.
You can say, no, I'd rather have cash. I'd rather have the equivalent cash. And if you're not gonna give me the equivalent of cash, I don't want any. So don't inherit other people's problems.
And they do it if it's a partial, like they accept everything else on the estate, but then they just don't take that part.
Just disclaim, it's called a disclaimer. Call the attorney and say, hey, we want to disclaim X, or hey, we can't take this piece of property. Can we get something else instead? We're gonna work with you. If not, you help people like you. Go, hey, come on. Let's do it. So you can always do that. So again, no timeshares, No cars, no RVs, no boats.
There are two organizations.
That do take-
that take cars.
Yep.
Save for the Fall and Catholic Charities.
Yep.
Right?
So you guys can have all the cars. You can have a car, send them to them. They know how to deal with them. There's all sorts of special rules. There's all sorts of special things you have to do. Then you've got to find the auction house or the parts place or whatever it is, and it's not something that every organization should do unless you're a pro at it and have the volume to actually invest some time and money to do it. Okay. Awesome. So good to know. You might be getting some cars. So any kind of questions around donor advised funds? One thing that I think I would do if I was any organization, hopefully you all have a page on your website that says how to give. I would definitely have something on there that says, you can give us a gift from your donor advised fund. Click here for our legal name and tax ID number. So you remind your donors that, oh, wait, I've got a donor advised fund. I don't necessarily need to give you this like random cash hanging around. You know, I've got a donor advised fund with $50,000 in it. They've already taken the deduction. Just get off their back. And let them use the donor advised fund for charitable purposes like it's supposed to be used, and you'll probably end up getting more.
Can you address the issue of people trying to use their donor advised fund for an event? And then trying to say, well, we'll pay for the part of the meal that we're getting.
Right.
And how you
So the
still
special-
can't do that.
Yep, so there's a couple of really kind of quirky rules about donor advised funds. Number one, the person who has a donor advised fund and makes the recommendation can't receive any benefits from their gift. Any benefits. So that means tickets, seat licenses at Georgia games, meals, drinks, memberships, any of that kind of stuff, that can't be paid for from donor advised fund. So if you're doing a gala, don't put the donor advised fund option on there. The only way that they can do it is they make it as an outright gift to them, to the organization, and they don't take the table or the tickets or anything like that. And they say this is just a contribution to help you in your thing. It's not part of the gala itself. So be really careful around that.
So the way we work it is, you know, we pay for all the food. Nobody's paying for their food, and everything that we receive is considered a donation. Is that still not, they still can't go, they still?
Not a donor advised fund.
So the IRS calls it a more than incidental benefit. And so we had a situation and it was, you know, they were saying, well, we'll just pay for the cost of the meal. And then the rest of it comes out of the donor advised fund. You can't do that either. Because the IRS considers the sponsor, because it was for a sponsorship,
Right.
that was a more than incidental benefit.
You can't.
And so they ended up doing an anonymous gift from their donor advised fund for the sponsorship and got no credit. And that's how, even though they were willing to pay for the cost, I mean, it logically doesn't make sense, you know, the people are trying to be generous. They're even saying, we'll pay for the cost of the meal, and they still can't use the money for a sponsorship if they're getting any recognition as being a sponsor.
Yeah, you can't even be in the program.
Right.
as-
Exactly. So
as a
what they
sponsor.
call it bifurcation of a gift. So you're thinking, oh, so donor advised fund, you know, the donation will be, you know, for $1,000 table, you know, it'll be $900 and it's just $100 for their seat and their meal. Can't do that. Can't bifurcate. IRS does not allow it.
With donor advised funds. you
Donor
can do
advised
it with
funds. You can
just-
do it all day long with any other
Outright cash.
contribution. But donor advised
But
funds,
if it is anonymous, they can still contribute it, take the credit for it, for the donation, but it can be anonymous in our program, and it would be okay. Oh, still no.
I mean, don't.
I don't know what you
Just
mean
don't-
about
just
Yeah,
don't
credit.
play
I
around
don't
with
know what you mean about
I mean,
credit.
basically, like in this situation, and because we were consulting with our legal counsel about it, and then it was decided that when they bought tickets, they paid for their own tickets.
Right.
And then they did a sponsorship out of their donor advised fund, but it was anonymous, so they didn't really get any
recognition.
I see.
And so because it was, and their donor advised fund didn't get any recognition. It was with us and it had even had a different name, but some people know that that's their donor advised fund. And the IRS considers that a more than incidental benefit because of the recognition, even if they weren't getting the meal paid for from it. It's very messy.
Very, very messy. So if you're getting a check from a donor advised fund to pay for a gala thing, investigate.
So if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna make something from your donor advised fund, essentially all of it should go towards the charity. And then if you're gonna buy a table or something,
Buy the table.
that would be a separate thing that you're personally paying
Right,
for.
right. That's the best thing.
Well, whoever the donor advised fund is with
Is trying to charge.
will
regular-
tell you that they'll say, no, you can't, they'll deny your.
And there's something on
Recommendation
what
for
you'll get
that.
from the donor advised fund provider, which is called a sponsoring organization, that says the donor can receive no goods or services or incidental benefits from this donation.
And so even though the organization says that, donors don't really understand it and they still try to do it. Because they
But it
think,
should get denied by whoever's holding. the
right,
advised
but
fund.
it's tricky and it
Like with
takes
Fidelity or
research.
Schwab or Vanguard, who took them.
I mean, and we have them check off that they're not getting any benefit when they're doing the request, and then the letter to the nonprofit says that, but it's messy. It's just totally messy.
Totally messy. The other thing is pledges. So someone makes a pledge. That's a real gray area right now. There's like a tax memo out there from 2017. That says a donor advised fund can make a pledge and pay off the pledge of a person. But it really depends on the sponsoring organization, whether they'll accept that or not. A lot of times what happens is, oh, I want to set up a scholarship at the University of Georgia and use my donor advised fund. It's the University of Georgia and the donor advised fund sponsoring organization that actually enter into a gift agreement. And then the donor promises to pay from his donor advised fund for the sponsorship. So that's a little tricky, crazy kind of thing as well with donor advised funds. So you just need to be careful around that kind of stuff. And we'll get into another quirk in a second. Any other donor advised funds?
I'm sorry, every time I get to a question, I'm just taking a bite. If somebody's using a donor advised fund and making an annual fund contribution and we list in an annual report or something like that, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
But if they were using it to gain a membership level that had benefits, then that's not okay.
Right.
So some places, you know,
So if you're gonna be then in the president's circle, and with the president's circle, you get, you know, a luncheon with the president, blah, 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 then you can't take that benefit. That makes sense. So really quirky. Very in the weeds. Some people are like, yeah, who's gonna know? Well, if it gets out, then you're in trouble and the sponsoring organization's in trouble and nobody really wants that. Nobody wants to be on the IRS's list
and
for any particular reason.
many of you are recipient organizations. And if you are getting a grant from us out of a donor advised fund, I hope you read the letter, you know, because don't just grab the check. Because the letter says, by accepting this check, I am attesting to the fact that the person is not getting a benefit. And we've had some things found out because of those great people at these nonprofits who read it and said, well, I need to let you know that they were trying to use this to buy auction items. Or they were they were saying this was for somebody's tuition, or this is a membership at something. And so read your letter and make sure that you're accepting it. You're saying that there's no benefit.
And also, you do not need to do a substantiation letter for donor advised fund grants that you receive. So don't necessarily worry about that. Just send a thank you letter. Because they've already taken the tax deduction when they put it into the donor advised fund.
Couldn't some of this be resolved in how you structure the fund itself? You can't
Bifurcate.
you can't put in restrictions that you cannot do. But I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea that a donor advised fund could enter into a pledge.
So the sponsoring organization controls the donor advised fund and owns the donor advised fund. So the sponsoring organization,
We don't do that. We
No.
will not enter into a pledge, but there isn't a thing in that ruling that says. They used to not allow this, but they now allow a donor advised fund to make a pledge payment. If they don't mention in the letter that it's a pledge payment, which is another ridiculous thing, but
yeah.
so
Don't ask,
people
don't
can
tell.
make a payment, like they can fulfill a pledge that they made personally. If they just ask us to do a grant out of their donor advised fund to that entity.
Just don't say this is to make a payment on this pledge.
And if they say it, we don't put it in there. We just give them, this is a grant from the donor advised fund. And that's okay for the IRS.
Again, quirky little rules that hopefully will get resolved at some point, but we're not really
No.
waiting on it. This pledge thing is one line in a tax memorandum out at the end of 2016. So, just random stuff. When you look at it, it's still a fairly new type of thing. It really took off in '86 with that tax act. So again, kind of working through all the little quirks.
But as an organization, if you have someone who has an asset that they want to help you with, but they don't want you to have all of it or all of it at one time because they want maybe some of it to go to their church and some of it to go to the school and some of it, then that's where they should set up a donor advised fund with us. Send the asset to us, it gets sold, then the money's in the donor advised fund. And then they can say, okay, I want this to go to my school, I want this to go to my parish, I want this to go to Catholic charities, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Anytime you kind of get a request for a weird asset, look to your intermediaries, like the Catholic Foundation for help. And they're not gonna accept something that is not gonna be able to be liquidated, is not gonna end up in, actual funds that can be used.
Like a swamp in South Florida.
Exactly. You don't want other people's problems, OPP, you do not want that. You want OPM, other people's money. Other people's problems. So, one other thing about donor advised funds too, as you kind of think about parishioners or donors getting a little more elderly and how do we kind of integrate plan giving into things? If they have a donor advised fund, when they pass away, there's something called a succession plan. And the fund holder of the donor advised fund determines what that succession plan is. And it's all over the map about what sponsoring organizations will allow. But all of them will allow that donor advised fund to go to charities when they pass away. So it's very much like asking for a bequest or part of a life insurance policy or part of an IRA. Say, hey, will you put us in your succession plan for your donor advised fund for 10%? Same thing. You'll probably get it a lot faster.
We allow it to go to the charities endowment fund that's helping us. As one of the
Yeah.
options, not,
Exactly.
it won't leave the foundation, it
Foundation,
would
but-
just go into your endowment fund.
But, you really wanted to use planned giving to build endowment. That's really kind of the impetus for a lot of this, because those gifts tend to be 200 times what an annual fund gift is. So you're really looking for those planned gifts to start to build an endowment and kind of build on that as well. It's an easy way to start doing that. So again, every sponsoring organization is a little different. But they all allow that money to ultimately benefit a charity in some way, whether it's through an endowment fund, outright, whatever it is that sponsoring organization allows. So don't miss that opportunity. If you see things being paid from Fidelity Charitable Gift Fund, Catholic Foundation, Community Foundation, Schwab Charitable Gift Fund, Vanguard Charitable Gift Fund, those are all donor advised funds. It's not Fidelity giving you a gift.
Oh, that's true.
Someone who has a donor advised fund there, so. So again, quirky. But so valuable. And the number, so last year, I think of all gifts that were made, 22% went to donor advised funds, which is huge. So people are using them, becoming a lot more common. Be sure to put on your website that we accept those. Here's our legal charitable name, here's our EIN number. That one, that really helps your donor go to the, online of their donor advised fund platform, stick your name in, make the grant. Go online, go onto the little, whatever it is.
I'm just curious, are you seeing the value of these donor advised funds? Are people spending their money, like, sitting on them, like, have you noticed?
It's a huge mix. I mean, you look at like sponsoring organizations in general and donor advised funds in general. It's about a 22 to 25% spend rate every year out of them. But you have some people who use their donor advised fund as just a sieve. And so they'll put in stock when, their CPA tells them to, they'll spend it all out in a year, they'll refill it and spend out. You've got some people who are saving up to do something really big, or they just sold their business or something, and they're putting a huge chunk of money in it, and that's gonna last them for 10, 20, 30 years. So then they're very much more judicious about doing that. Sponsoring organizations say that you have to make a grant out of your donor advised fund at least every 3 years. You guys have, that's kind of standard operating procedure, so it doesn't just sit there. But realize that money's invested as well. So.
And we have some people who are building it for when they're retired, and then they can still do the charitable giving that they were doing during their lifetime, during their work career. I mean. And also, if you do a donor advised fund with us, we do have the portal that you can go on and easily request your grants to be made. So.
Exactly. So succession plan, be in it. It's huge. Let's talk a little bit about Secure Act 2.0. We talked about it before, but there's another little complex little thing that the government kind of threw our way to really put things in a weird place. So for traditional or inherited IRAs, once an owner of that IRA hits age 70 and a half, forget about 72, 73, 74, 75, whatever it is on the other side. Once they hit 72 and a half, they can take up to $100,000 out of their IRA. It goes directly to charity, cannot go to a donor advised fund or a private foundation. Goes directly to charity. They take no tax deduction, but they do not take it into income either. So it's a wash. For people who are age 70 and a half, most of them don't have W-2 income. So they're not really looking for a charitable deduction anyway. A lot of people have a lot of money in their IRAs. When someone inherits, they now only have 10 years to spend it out no matter what their age is, and they're going to get income tax hit on it. So a lot of my clients are trying to spend out their IRAs. A lot of them don't necessarily need the RMD for income. They're living off investment income or whatever it is. So it's a great option, and it's a great option as an outright gift. So again, might be something you want to put in your newsletter in the next couple of weeks, because again, this can be a 4 to 6 week process for it to happen, and it's annual. So the annual $100,000 from the IRA per person. So if you've got a couple,
How much can you?
$100,000 for this year. One of the new things that they did is they actually indexed it for inflation now. So it's going to be 105 next year.
Is that per donor or like for an individual? Is that per couple or per individual?
Per person. Per IRA owner, not per IRA. A lot of people have multiple IRAs, but per IRA owner.
So in other words, you gotta get a hold in order to give. You gotta get a hold in order to give.
And not pay any tax, yes.
The age was
70 and a half.
70 or 72?
70 and a half.
70.5, 70.
And that did not change from the original Secure Act that made this all possible.
Do you have any stock content that we could use to publish that kind of message?
So so I'm sure Juliet has some. We do. And here's a trend.
Can we get it?
Yes, it's on our website under resources, but after this meeting, because we will send something out to everyone that participates in today.
Awesome, thank you.
And also just, an aside, I was gonna talk about it in trends, but we probably won't get into it. If you haven't used ChatGPT, AI, go on there and say, write me 100-word ad around the charitable IRA rollover. You'll probably get something that's pretty good. That's what I do now. When I'm trying to explain something to a client in really simple terms, I just go on ChatGPT and say, explain how a charitable remainder trust works. Wow. It's incredible.
That applies to traditional IRAs and
Traditional IRAs and inherited
inherited. Okay, thank you.
IRAs. So the bone that we got was that you can do a one-time only during your lifetime distribution from your IRA of $50,000 one time during your life to fund a charitable gift annuity or a charitable remainder trust. So what is that? Charitable gift annuity, basically, it's an annuity. You put money into you put $50,000, this will be cash, into a charitable gift annuity. That money is invested by whoever has a gift annuity. Catholic Foundation does do gift annuities now because of this new regulation that came out, or new opportunity that came about. Based on your age, you get paid out a rate every year. So these gift annuities that are coming from IRAs cannot be deferred. They have to start paying out within a year of the IRA being set up, or of the charitable gift annuity being set up. So you get your 7%, 8%, whatever it is annually. Whatever is left over when you pass away goes to the Catholic Foundation and can go into an endowment for your organization, correct?
Right, you get to pick which endowment they want it to benefit.
So it's great. Don't offer them yourself. Use an intermediary again. Because the quirk with the charitable gift annuity is you are under a contract with your donor to make these payments, even if there's no money left in the charitable gift annuity. Even if it's underwater. So let somebody who's experienced, who knows how to invest it, who knows how to have the appropriate rates based on age, who can do all the due diligence and assume the risk. So again, intermediaries are great.
Couldn't in theory, you just take the RMD and put it into a CRAT or a CRUT and accomplish somewhat similar?
Nah. This doesn't make sense. Income tax wise, because you're putting in an asset that if you take the RMD, you have to pay income tax on it. So you're putting in money that's post-tax dollars into a charitable remainder annuity trust, which doesn't make sense because you want a charitable deduction to offset an appreciated asset that you're putting into a charitable remainder trust. That's kind of the whole tax scheme about it, the uncharitable side of charitable remainder trust. You want to save taxes and maximize what you're doing. It's kind of behind all of this type of stuff. So you can also put that $50,000 into a charitable remainder trust. Nobody is going to do a charitable remainder trust for $50,000 because you cannot add to it. So forget I even said anything about the charitable remainder trust. Forget it's even written in there. Who knows why they did it? This is all written by people who don't understand any of this. And they're like, oh, we'll do it for a charitable remainder trust because we're so generous. And it probably costs about $2,500. Is that a more or more? If you're going to Brett to set up a charitable remainder trust. So nobody's gonna do it. Because again, you can't add to it. You can only put that $150,000 in.
That's for age 70 and a half also.
70 and a half also. Yep. And so it's confusing because now the regular, you're not giving it to charity. RMDs are going to 72, 73, 74, 75. It's changing every year for a little while and getting higher. The charitable portion of this is staying the same at 70 and a half. So again, we're special. Quirky. Quirky things.
And does everyone understand how a charitable gift annuity works then? I get that.
Thanks,
But great
Ed.
thing.
Just wanted to mention that, you know, again, if your donors, if your parishioners, if your parents are asking if you, because there was an article in Forbes, an article in Wall Street Journal. Our office started receiving a lot of calls. I don't know if you all have, but if, again, you can do this, you know, through the Catholic Foundation, and your organization can be, your organization's endowment fund can be the beneficiary of this. Here.
And so a couple things that are kind of happening in the sector right now that we're seeing is the IRS is getting much more active on the charitable side of things, taking much greater interest in gifts and especially gifts of appreciated assets and things that look a little too good to be true. So there's certain charitable remainder trusts are actually on the IRS watch list right now. Conservation easements have always been on the IRS watch list. So if you do one of those, you're gonna get audited, especially the syndicated ones. That's no bueno. Nobody wants to do that. The other things that they're really looking at now are substantiation letters. They're not done correctly, they're gonna deny the deduction. And that's gonna suck for your donor. They're not gonna be very happy about that. Because they're not paying attention. Appraisals. If an organization gives you any kind of asset that's not a cash or check, that's over $5,000, the donor is responsible for getting a qualified appraisal of that. And it has to be a qualified appraisal. There's all sorts of IRS rules around that. You cannot pay for the appraisal. The donor has to pay for the appraisal. They have to, if it's over a certain dollar amount, they have to attach the appraisal to their tax return. It has to be an appraisal of the value of what they give you as of the date of the gift. Can't use an appraisal that was done more than 60 days before that. You can't extrapolate. You can't say, oh, I sold my business. Here's the appraisal for the business. I gave you 20%. So we'll just do that. No, you cannot do that. It has to be for the actual gift as of the date of the gift. And again, a qualified appraisal. There's a case recently that came out in the last few months where deduction was denied for a gift of art around this. And the gallery owner thought that he could be the qualified appraiser. It didn't work. $2 million deduction denied. Plus taxes and penalties. Not fun. Again. The other thing that they're looking at as well is timing of gifts. So say there's going to be a sale of a business. They have to give up that charitable piece of it in order to kind of take advantage of the tax savings before they sign a letter of intent or before there's any kind of coming to terms of everything. Otherwise, the IRS looks at it as one transaction or what they call a step transaction. So really what you're trying to do is give a portion of your business to charity. That's a completed gift. Now the charity has your business interests. So 4 or 5 months later, the business goes into the sales process. They have a letter of intent. He's going to sell the rest of his interest. Got a buyer. It all goes through. Your shares get redeemed out as part of that sales process. La-di-da, your donor got a tax deduction for the fair market value of what he gave you as of the time of gift. And now there's a nice little pot of money. Works out great. He doesn't pay capital gains on what he gives you. Most business owners have a basis of 0, so they're paying capital gains on everything. So it's great, wonderful. You don't have that time separation. IRS is going to come in and say, this is all one transaction. No deduction.
We've had people say they want to donate a portion of a business, but they already have a sales contract or they have something, and then we have to say, no, you can't do that. And so you can give us some of your cash after you make your sale. It's a separate thing.
Yep, so there's a case that just came out about a business with 15 shareholders. All 15 shareholders did this charitable strategy. Gave away 20% of their interest to charity. Charity didn't know that there's already a letter of intent out there. The IRS came in and kind of looked at somebody's tax return and goes, let's examine this. And they pulled the string apart. All 15 were denied deductions, taxes and penalties. So the IRS is taking much more interest. We've seen tons and tons of cases starting to come down now around charitable deductions and all that other kind of stuff. And now that they've got a lot more funding, there's a lot more people. So I think we're going to see a lot more about it. So mind your P's and Q's as you go through that. One other trend that's really going to start just because of rates now and interest rates. Charitable remainder trusts are a great tax efficient thing for people to consider now. Charitable remainder trusts, you basically give a gift of appreciated assets into a trust. You can pay out for either 20 years or the lifetime of somebody. They get the annual percentage payment, usually 5 to 7%, depending on what really works with some IRS numbers. Whatever's left over goes to charity. So that's a very tax efficient thing to do right now. So you might see more charitable remainder trusts and more discussion of charitable remainder trusts come out. When interest rates were zero, there would be no offense to do a charitable remainder trust. Now that they're where they're at, makes a ton of sense to do a charitable remainder trust if somebody's doing that through a estate plan. Talking to several people right now about doing that. Because what's going to happen on January 1st, 2026 is that the federal estate and gift tax exemption is probably going to go from, probably going to get up to about probably 27 million a couple by the time all the inflation adjustments come out for stuff in the next couple of years. And it's probably going to go down to about 12 million a couple. So you're going to have a lot of people who didn't have to think about estate taxes now having to think about estate taxes. That's the number one conversation we're having with our clients right now. So what are we going to do to plan for estate taxes? Even though you never thought you were going to have to pay them. Because that's going to sunset effective January 1st, 2026. And again, this is not a political statement, but we all know how efficient our representatives are about getting any kind of legislation through. And this would have to be major tax legislation. That changes this. So again, don't really see it coming. I know Brett's probably sleeping in his office. It's gonna be another 2010, 12, but we didn't have a state tax for a year, kind of thing. So again, there's opportunity for y'all to do that. So any questions, concerns, things I didn't talk about that you're hearing about?
If I could just go back to your opening remarks and just give you an example.
I don't remember what they were.
Quite a while ago. So on Tuesday, January 2nd, we get all our mail in from the United States Postal Service. So no matter what checks are in that mail, no matter what dates are on those checks, there is no deductions for
No, you get a deduction. It's the mailbox rule. It's in your mailbox.
It's in your mailbox.
It's in your mailbox by the 31st.
If we get a
Midnight.
FedEx or UPS.
It's good.
Yeah, UPS, and it's dated a date in 2023, it's
good because it's FedEx or UPS.
Okay.
If it's USPS, next day mail or something along those lines, then it's not good. It's when you receive it.
Right. Ooh. So you
Really
can just
quirky.
assume on January 2nd, you received it on the 31st.
Right.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So it's in your mailbox. If the driver comes to deliver it on the 2nd, no deduction,
no deduction, no matter what day it is.
no matter what day it is.
All right.
But you don't have to determine that.
I think that it means that no one should check their mailboxes on January 2nd.
Exactly.
And just wait until after the 3rd and then.
So what you do is you do in your substantiation letter, you say, thank you for your gift of XXX that we received on X date.
Right, well,
It's up to the donor to tell the IRS that they may have received it and opened it that date, but it was in the mail X date, and it was in their mailbox X date. So it's not up to you to kind of prove.
But I think what you're saying is remind all our donors, this is an unusual
year. We all hate
Don't wait
Sundays,
till the
being
last minute.
31st. Exactly. Bring your check to mass.
The other thing you didn't touch on, so online giving. If they do a credit card transaction or an ACH transaction on 10 o'clock, December 31st. It counts
It
in,
hits your account.
well, it hasn't even gotten to our account till.
But it's in
electronic.
But our provider, Vanco, as long as they got it, or constructively received it.
Yeah, as long as it hits your whatever account, your Vanguard account or whatever, your DTC, whatever it is that you're getting it to, as long as it hits that account, you're good.
Can
I
just?
I have seen, and I did, you know what I do on New Year's Eve, I don't have a whole lot going on. But I have seen several transactions come through online, literally minutes before midnight of substantial amounts.
Yep.
We're talking about me, Dave. It's okay.
It's just ingrained.
We've seen it too.
It's just how we are.
You still have the money, it's just the donors at risk.
Right, I'm
That's
not
more
getting the
tax.
deduction. And again, it's the donors who.
They wait
tells
till the last
IRS
minute.
when the
Yeah.
date was. It's not
But
necessarily.
also like it's
You
set
still
up
have money.
automatically to send a receipt to them.
Right.
So they have that as proof that they got it
Exactly.
on the 31st.
Substantiation.
So point of clarification. In terms of electronic transmission, right? Because electronic, I think this is what we're talking about. So when the donor pushes the button and the electronic transmission
Starts.
occurs, that is when
No,
you cannot count it then, even if you have a third party receiving.
So if
that
the third party
electronic
that
transmission.
receives it is tied to an account that you own,
Yes,
then yes, when it hits that account. For that
Okay.
third party, then yes, it's a deduction.
okay, that's what I needed to know.
So
So
as
for instance-
long as you control that account,
I'm still confused.
it's very confusing.
So I have,
That's why we don't talk about it, 'cause nobody-
and I'm sorry to be so granular, but I'm still confused. So say a Mighty Cause, somebody makes a donation, you get the Mighty Cause notification that, Sally Smith just gave you $100. But you have a monthly disbursement report that comes through from Mighty Cause that has a delay in it from the time that you get your donation and they get their receipt. What's the date that we use?
It's when the money hits your account.
So to
I would say that that's not how any nonprofit in the country does it. Because we all use third party, I mean, we
Third party
have to
automatic.
use a
things.
credit card
Yeah.
processing
Yeah.
system.
Exactly, and they do an automatic receipt
Yeah.
out,
So,
which,
We're going to continue to say,
exactly.
thank you for your gift of
And if
that
you're,
date.
if you're the donor, you've gotten a receipt back.
you
It
should have,
says-
yeah,
it
if
says-
you're sending an automatic.
Exactly. And again,
receipt,
it's the
you're good.
donor's responsibility to tell the IRS
Yeah.
when the gift was made, it's not yours.
Okay.
You're just giving a contemporaneous receipt saying, this is what I got.
Oh,
But didn't, I mean, the third party that you're using is set up to send an automatic receipt to that person.
Right, but over a certain amount, we also acknowledge.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. You can
then,
always
right,
send a thank
so,
you
but
letter.
it's the receipt that they're gonna use to
Got it.
show that they got it on that time, that they gave.
So substantiation letter is not the same as a thank you letter.
Right.
Should be different.
clarify, please.
So donor makes a donation to you, you send them a receipt. Very cut and dried, thanks for your whatever. No goods or services, you send a stock, whatever, high low of the day, blah, blah, blah. You should always be sending a thank you note that says, thank you so much for your gift. We really appreciate you being a donor of our organization. That's not a substantiation receipt.
Got it.
And a substantiation receipt is not a thank you.
Sometimes they're the same.
You can make them.
Sometimes it can be the same,
Yeah.
but you know, if you want to provide good stewardship to your donor, handwritten notes goes a long way these days. For that. So any other questions? Comments, concerns, things you're like, why are we even talking about this?
Question on the donor donates out of their IRA. And you get the check. How do you know? Oh, it's not tax deductible? Or it could be tax deductible.
So chances are you're not gonna know, because people now can write checks directly out of their IRAs.
Right.
And so you don't necessarily know it's a rollover, charitable rollover, or whatever it is. So you're just gonna record it as a gift, because you don't really care what the donor does tax wise on that. You probably want to call them up, especially if you're a sponsoring organization of a donor advised fund, and say, hey, we got a gift drawn off of your IRA. I just want to make sure that this isn't an IRA charitable rollover. Because you remember, we told you every year and every month and every day for the past 5 years that you cannot put a IRA charitable rollover donation into a donor advised fund. It happens every year. Always does. Have to go in and do special stuff to make sure that it's all kosher and legal. But
Actually, it should be no issue, because if I'm giving a donation from my IRA, right? I'm not expecting a letter from the foundation to tell me, this was your this was your contribution, and it was the values was much. I would be calling if it was deductible, say, hey, where's my letter? If you were deductible, if it's not, I'm not even calling and say, where's my letter, because I'll be lying at that point. All right, so I don't.
so it may not matter to you. It certainly matters to the Catholic Foundation and their team.
I mean, usually when somebody donates, make sure he gets a letter saying that's deductible and no goods of service were received by you.
Right. So the problem with the charitable rollover is it's not deductible.
Yeah. And so we're always trying to figure it out, because also if they're making a gift from a donor advised fund elsewhere, that's not getting a deductible note in their letter too. So we're always trying to figure out what kind of gift, what is it?
All these little things that are gonna keep you up. So you never thought about before. Maybe nightmares, so thank you for all of that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Have a happy new year.
Thank you so much for signing that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So much, very grateful. This is a great dialogue, great information.
Great.
Christy,
Great questions.
very, very good questions. Very astute crowd, but this is important, especially this time of year as we begin the charitable giving season and throughout the year. So the staff at the Catholic Foundation, our board, our volunteers, we thank you all so much for spending this time with us at the Catholic Foundation Charitable Giving Lunch and Learn. We hope you found the information very valuable and helpful in the work that you do, or for yourselves as individual donors. A special thank you to Monsignor Durrell and to Brett Karen. We are also super grateful to our sponsors, to Georgia United Credit Union and to West Radio. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, just a tremendous gratitude goes to Christy Eckoff with Wells Fargo Private Bank. She's so gracious to share her knowledge and immense expertise in the world of philanthropy with all of us. So later today, you'll receive a survey in the mail. Your feedback is really important to us as we plan our future events. And the next event that we're excited to bring to the Archdiocese is on March the 14th. So please mark your calendars for the fifth annual Catholic Foundation Investment Forum. is we'll be at Dunwoody Country Club again for breakfast. So stay tuned for more information, but registration, it has gone live on our website at cfnga.org.
And we have the same speaker that we had this past year, Ron Temple from Lazard. And so,
Michael Butkus.
yes, and Michael Butkus, who is our investment advisor with Atlantic Consulting.
So again, whether you're an advisor or an individual at a parent, school, or nonprofit who wishes to make a lasting impact in the community, we are here to serve each and every one of you. God bless and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.